Welcome to Growth Marketer Academy with Ryan and Andrea Eldridge. When it comes to generating and nurturing leads, the most profitable tool in your arsenal may surprise you.
Email!
Wait, what?
Okay, so I know what you're thinking. Email is so 1995, but that's because most marketers aren't using it right.
Today, we're going to give you the secret to effective email campaigns that, once set up, can return major dividends for years to come.
This is Ryan Eldridge.
And this is Andrea Eldridge. Welcome to Growth Marketer Academy.
It would have been kind of cool if we would have done it at the same time. Welcome. It'd be like...
Yeah, it'd have been like, oh, yeah.
This is episode number 4 of the Growth Marketer Podcast. I'm Ryan Eldridge, Chief Strategist of Squirrel Digital Marketing.
And this is Andrea Eldridge, Creative Director at Squirrel Digital Marketing.
Thank you for joining us in our ongoing series about how to gain leads for your business without cold calling or knocking on doors.
If you've missed any of our foundational episodes, make sure to catch our breakdown of effective audience analysis and how to build a keyword matrix.
2 of my favorites.
They're definitely the basis of any effective marketing campaign. And because you need to know your customer to reach them and to frame your messaging.
But today it's all about email. I love email.
So I hear. So much so, in fact, that we actually are going to need 2 podcasts to cover this one. So what we should start with is just the general understanding that if you've written off email marketing, you're leaving money on the table.
Yeah, a study by Marketing Sherpa found that email marketing is used by 81%, right? Was that it?
81% as the primary lead generation tool for business-to-business firms that were surveyed. So that's a huge number of firms that use email and depend on email and email marketing for their business operations.
Yeah, I mean, I get hundreds of emails a day, most of them unsolicited.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's common. But our key here is going to be to talk about how to make sure that yours doesn't get lost in that sea of messages, how to do it effectively, because we'll start off with what doesn't work. And it sounds like from your hundreds of messages, you've seen a lot.
Oh, I read every single one.
You do? All of them? Okay.
Word for word. In fact, I often reply back with grammatical changes to their email and say, hey, look, if you really want to be effective, you should say this instead.
Yeah. Okay.
They love it.
So that's really how you spend most of your time, it sounds like. Okay. Yeah. So in this episode, which is part 1, we're going to cover how to use email in business-to-business lead generation. And in the next episode, we're going to cover how to use email to nurture a lead into a customer. So it's some pretty awesome stuff that we're going to go over the next 2 episodes. Let's get started.
Yes, let's do it.
So let's start off with what isn't going to work, because I think we've all seen a lot of examples of those, and they're tempting, certainly from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, you basically buy or rent a list of 15,000 or 150,000 prospects, and you spam them all the same message, and you probably might get a small conversion percentage, like a 0.25% or something. Go woohoo! I got 3 customers
who opened my message,
who opened or are interested in whatever my product or service is, but you burned the other, 149,997 of those people.
Yes.
Right? They're like, oh my God.
And honestly, cold outreach, actually, it can still work, but just not that way. And there's no one that isn't going to recognize that you sent out the same 15,000 emails to everyone, and you're just going to get marked as spam or junk. So the other thing that a lot of marketers these days do is they try to just change just a couple things. Yeah. Like just 2 words of personalization.
Hello, Joe.
Yeah.
Hello, Joe. I am interested in your marketing product or service thing that you show on your website on the fabulous
Fill
place.
In the blank here. Yeah. And those are just as bad. In fact, these sorts of messages can actually work in the opposite direction. You mentioned about burning those leads, but if you did have a potential customer in that list, you can turn off that customer and damage your reputation. Because keep in mind, obviously business owners, all of us, are executives are busy people. So if you're wasting their time by filling up their inbox with junk messages, they're going to develop a negative connection with your brand. And you just, frankly, you aren't fooling anybody. So stop.
And of course, if you do somehow fall into this trap, proofread, because we get so many emails with grammatical errors. They use the wrong context. It's almost like they're outsourcing it to India, and then they don't actually proofread any of the message themselves.
Yes.
And it's just, I don't understand. Like, proofreading is so easy.
And keep in mind, for many of your leads, this message is going to be your first impression.
Yes.
So you don't want to waste that. If you have spelling errors, grammar problems, and yes, you are going to have to figure out the there, and there. That's going to be important. Just do it.
All those grammar Nazis on Facebook are probably freaking out.
Right? So and template issues is huge too. So if you do use a template and you have those fill in the blanks, and for example, let's say you've coded it to say dear first name, but for this contact you don't have a first name, and so it says dear
bracket
first name
bracket.
Or hello first name. Like, it's even worse.
Yeah.
It's just terrible. So you have to be really careful. Keep in mind that this is,
there's a person. There's a person behind that email message, and you want to make sure that you're giving that person enough respect and energy to show that you weren't spamming them and wasting their time.
But there is a middle ground between sending 15,000 spam messages to a generic list and hand typing the next 3 years of your life to reach 600 contacts with a separate personalized message. There's a middle ground. What
you really have to do is make sure your message is balanced with the amount of time you're going to spend with the amount of time they're going to spend getting it, right? So that way there's an equal portion on each, but it also needs to be like super effective, because if you could be effective with 100 messages versus wildly effective with 150,000 messages, I would much rather be effective with 100 messages and have all 100 people like, hey, yeah, I'm interested in your product/service.
Yes. So let's talk about what to do instead.
Yes.
Because you have kind of a unique strategy that
I do, and we used it recently too. We'll talk about kind of our case study.
I'm sorry, I keep clearing my throat. I don't know what the heck is going on, but just...
Sorry,
anyway,
Lucas.
Ignore that. So, yeah. Okay.
There it is again.
I know. That's why I was trying to get it out of my system.
It's just you get nervous around me.
I know.
I see that.
It's true.
I'm so intimidating with my awesome good looks and wonderful personality.
Yes. So let's talk about what to do instead, which is video outreach messages. This sounds hugely time-oriented, and I'm wondering how you do that.
You would think so, but this isn't really a new technique. But now with cell phones and basic video editing being so easily accessible and easy to use, it's made it so easy and scalable. Whereas before, if you tried to do a video outreach message just 4 years ago, 5 years ago, you'd be suffering through editing and dealing with how do you do sound and lighting and all this other crazy stuff. But now, literally pop out your iPhone, take a good 2.5 minute video, and you're ready to go.
Yeah. And, this still ends up at the end, obviously, being highly personalized because even though you may be able to have certain portions of your message be templatized, if you're doing a video, the recipient isn't going to get the impression that you are sending a similar video to 8 or 200 other contacts.
Yeah. So to put the basic concept into play, ultimately you're taking a small portion and personalizing, say, the beginning and the very end. And then the middle sections are really just kind of templates that you pre-recorded wearing hopefully the same clothing. Otherwise, that'll look really weird.
Yeah, that would be odd.
So if you're willing to do a little video editing, that's the core concept there. But if you don't want to do any video editing at all, then what you do is you templatize your pitch or your message that you're going to say, and you just say it again and again and again.
And we'll get into a really detailed example here in just a second.
All right.
Okay, so let's start with the template portions, because that's an interesting concept when it comes to video, being able to use a repetitive section in a video. For that, you're going to go back to the audience analysis that you created, where you identified the pain points of specific people that you're targeting, different tiers. So whether it's the entry-level worker, the manager, the owner, whoever it is that you're targeting, through your audience analysis, you should have identified what their pain points are, right?
Yeah.
And so for the videos that you're creating for your manager potential leads, you are basically going to devise solutions to the pain points of that specific target.
Yes.
And that solution, since it's going to be related to your product and not specific to their company, should be able to be templatized.
So let's say you're providing an automated phone systems like VoIP telephone systems to businesses, right?
Okay.
That's a good business to business solution.
Okay.
And your target audience likely has different pain points. So let's say your most, I mean, I don't know, we've had 3 different phone systems in our business and they're a huge pain in the ass. They're super complicated. I should say they're a huge pain in the butt. They're super complicated. Trying to stick with that
Okay, so
non-explicit.
we can just start that one again.
So the problem is they're crazy complicated. They have all kinds of different, like, you've got to record different messages, or you got to set up different lines, or how's this phone call going to be routed for this kind of thing. The equipment is really expensive. You've got to have a place in your business to house this equipment. And then the setup and navigation of it overall is also just, it's laborsome. There's lots of training hours involved. And so overall, the systems are they're antiquated and they're hard to deal with.
And they're cumbersome.
Yeah.
And so for someone who's considering that system, they're going to have very relatable, but they're going to have the same kind of pain points. Yeah. They're not going to be unique from one company to another. It should be pretty easy to identify those consistent pain points that your system could resolve.
Your core message there can be just that templatized words. Hey, phone systems are super complicated. They're really expensive. You got to house them. The training time takes forever. Let me tell you about how our solutions can fix this problem for you. And just by pre-recording or pre-writing out just that one section, your video is mostly done.
Yeah, and as you were starting to explain a few moments ago, so your introduction and your closing is going to be 100% personal. So that part is not going to be templatized, but the part where you're talking about your specific product or solution can be consistent from one video to the next. Yeah. And whether or not you are doing an edit where you basically pre-film the one portion where you talk about how your solution, fixes these pain points, and then edit it in to personalized introductions and closings for each individual client, or if, just simply saying the same words over and over again to each person is easier than coming up with a unique video each time. So if you find that the editing time is more time consuming for you than just simply filming another 2-minute video for a different client that's ultimately giving the same information and just saying the same information over and over and over again, it's really up to you, but it's still significantly faster if you've got these templated center sections.
So let's talk about how to do it then, because I think we get the basic concept now. Let's talk about how we're going to get this done. So you do a lot of segment plans. We do a lot of television appearances and things, and so you do segment plans. Let's talk about that.
Yes.
What is that?
The main thing to do in terms of preparation, you find that while off the cuff you think, okay, well, I can just sit down and talk because I know what I'm talking about, and it's cool, it's no big deal.
You have a 12-minute rambling video if you just sit down and talk.
You do, and you also will forget major things like, your name or your company name, and you go back to watch the video and you go, gosh, dang it, I just forgot to do this one section, and now I have to edit in 2 minutes of me going, Andrea from Squirrel Digital Marketing, because I forgot to say it the first time. So you want to make a script. You want to at least include some bullet points, things that you can visualize as you're doing these videos, whether it is that you're looking at notes on your screen, whether or not.
And bullet points is really important, because if you write it out word for word, what you're going to say, you're going to read it, and then it's going to come off like, hello, I am Andrea from Squirrel Digital Marketing, and I would really like to buy your, it's just
true. Yeah, you don't. So when it comes to a script, you want to make your points out, but put it in such a way that it's the order that's going to feel familiar to you. If there's something that's really important that you phrase a specific way, you can write that one phrase in your notes. But otherwise, yes, leave it broad strokes so that you can use your own words, speak naturally, speak conversationally, engage with the camera. I know I've had a lot of experience over time with the fact that while you may feel super animated as you're talking, you look back on the video and you look like an absolute robot, particularly if you're somewhat uncomfortable with video in general and you feel kind of goofy on camera. You're going to look really weird. So kind of pump up that energy, jump around.
And my advice to you was what? Do you remember what I used to say to you when you do camera?
I don't.
Wiggle. I'd say, you
yeah.
just all you got to do is you just got to wiggle every now and then, and that'll give you some energy on the camera. You remember that? Oh,
well, is that why you always wiggle in your segments? Okay.
You always see me kind of bouncing and wiggling a little bit. It just gives you more energy. And even if you're like, man, I just come off as the corniest mother in the world, don't worry about it. What happens?
The energy you project is
you lose energy between you and the camera, and from the camera to the person who's watching it. You lose all that energy. So you want to make sure you just kind of pump it up a little bit.
It's true. High energy is going to be far more engaging for the recipient than something that feels normal to you on camera, which will come off as incredibly tired, sleepy, and boring to the recipient. Yeah. So just keep that in mind.
So you get your script down, or your basic bullet points down.
Yes. Make sure that you don't forget your target's name. Don't forget to introduce yourself. Some key things that you want to make sure that you hit on in the script as well, and that you write in however large and bold you need so that you don't forget those key points.
So it might be something like, hey, I'm Ryan from Squirrel Digital Marketing, and or it'd be more like this.
Well, we have an example coming up in a second.
We have an example coming up. Okay.
So the second thing you're going to want to do is you want to make a plan to make several practice videos before you do your final draft. And this is going to be basically in order to give yourself some comfort with it. The more often you do it, the more comfortable you'll be. Similar to the concept of role playing, except you don't have to have anyone watching you or engaging with you. Just do it on your own so that you get the phrasing down, so that if something sounds silly when you say it out loud and yet you thought it would be great when you wrote it out, you can catch that before you waste the time doing the video.
But here's a pro tip. You know what I've noticed is when I do videos alone by myself, I'm more self-conscious than if I have somebody to talk to. And so you can easily just have a friend, neighbor, family member, whatever, sitting on the other side or holding the camera, and just pretend that person is your target. Yeah. So you can just go like, hey, Jim, how's it going? I'm Ryan from Squirrel Digital Marketing, and I wanted to talk to you about your problem, solution, blah, blah, blah. Right?
Yeah, that's true. That's a good idea.
It makes it a little easier. You can actually engage with somebody, and you can kind of get that energy feedback from someone rather than you staring at a camera like, hello, hello.
The other thing that's the other kind of insider tip is don't try for studio-worthy perfection, because that actually comes across as a little overly edited, too polished, doesn't feel conversational, and it can feel too much like a outreach sales message. You want it to be conversational.
We're in the age of Instagram and Facebook. People are used to seeing amateur video, and they tend to see that as more genuine than this really high polished with lots of production value that you've spent 16 hours completely crafting. Some of the best videos I've seen is literally somebody just holding their camera or their phone just a few feet away from them and walking around. It's just really remarkable. In fact, that's what we did. When we get to the case study, we'll talk about how we did it.
Well, so let's walk through an example from start to finish of a model that can be applied to any business-to-business service or product, because I know what you're thinking at this point is like, okay, yeah, that works for some maybe, but not for my product. Okay. So let's say that you're selling an automated cloud backup solution to companies. Because again, that's a service. It's pretty, something that can apply to multiple businesses. But let's say that the target vertical that you're going to focus on is specifically standalone urgent care facilities. So from this example, you would have certain targets that you have probably identified in your audience analysis. That would be
like a front office clerk. You'll have the doctors, the people that are going to be using it, like in the inpatient rooms, and then obviously the administrators, the people that are making financial decisions for the urgent care facility.
And so your first step is going to be to find specific names of people that hold the positions at the companies you're looking to target, because in order to be personal, you don't want to just say, hi, nurse practitioner. You want to be able to say, hey, Sally, I was, blah, 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 doing such and such, and came across your information and wanted to, let you know what we have going on.
Well, I think we have a sample script coming up.
Yes. So basically the way that you would find a name of a specific contact person, how would you do that if you don't know?
Really? Well, you'd go back to your audience analysis. Remember, we talked about a lot of this stuff where you can go into the very specifics of how to find a direct target, one specific person in a company. So you can go back to our audience analysis episode. Okay. That was episode number 2.
Maybe. Yeah. Just listen to them all. You'll find it. It's cool.
But if you go back to that episode, you'll notice we talk very deep. We dive deep into how to find your target. But ultimately, you can look for. So if you're on urgent care facilities and you're looking for the front office clerk, the manager, or the administrators, you can go to the LinkedIn, type in the company name, take a look at all of the people that work there, and then find your targets that way.
Okay.
Or what you can do is even, let's say you have a target position that you're looking for, but not necessarily a target company, right? Let's say you're not targeting one specific urgent care, but every urgent care in the United States.
Okay.
Then you would just try to determine what is the name of the position that you're looking for. So if there's like an accounting coordinator or IT, whatever, you find out what their title is in their urgent care, and you can go to LinkedIn and use their search and find those individuals too that way. And then you can create a giant list.
Now, is there any way to do this type of thing if you just can't find specific names? I mean, LinkedIn, while it's a great resource, isn't all encompassing. And so if you happen to have contact, I don't know, how would you even get contact information that you couldn't track down a name for? I mean, I'm guessing you could potentially have a list.
Well, so one of our clients is a credit union consultant, right?
Okay.
And so they have to talk to very specific people in those credit unions in order to get them hired, right? And so they have to talk to the CEOs and the CFOs. And so what you do is they go to each of the websites. There's only 400 credit unions in the United States. So it's kind of a small list. And so they go to the website of that credit union, if not on LinkedIn, and they can literally see like who's the CEO, who's the CFO, and they can see the names of the people they're looking for and add them to their list. And so even if they don't have like the John at urgentcarecenter.com, and they're like, well, gee, I don't know what the guy's email address is. They can literally get the guy's name and go into hunter.io, which is a great email scraping tool, and it'll tell you everybody's email address from that company or that domain that you type in. So that's pretty cool.
Okay, cool. Okay, so in your audience analysis, I know we keep going back to that, but you've identified specific pain points for each of your targets. So in our example here, where we're looking at urgent care centers, your front office clerk is probably looking for, like, say, easy HIPAA compliant access to historical records.
And doctors, they're going to need quick access to the records while they're talking to the patient in the room. So they're like, oh, I see you're in for your melanoma. Let's talk about what's going on with that. Let me pull up your records.
And how terrible is it that I laugh when you say melanoma? So, yeah, that's appropriate.
I was going to say mesothelioma, but I can't say that.
Yeah.
Obviously.
And then, your administrators are going to be concerned with costs, the cost of storage of these devices. So once you know who you're targeting and you've got specifics of ideally names, what I was starting to ask about before of if you just absolutely can't come up with names, but you somehow have email addresses to send these out, you could potentially introduce yourself and refer more specifically to the position. Like you were saying, about if you know that you're targeting doctors, you can specifically say, hey, we've, discovered in our experience that doctors have blah, 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 blah. And so that it still feels personal to them because they know you're just talking specifically to doctors of urgent care facilities. Try to get as specific as you can.
Yeah, that'll be pretty specific.
Okay. So first in this example, you're going to create your introduction. This is part of your scripting. So you need to make sure that you define who you are. Yeah. So, hi, Janet. I'm Jackson, and I work for company ABC Data Solutions as an information management specialist. This is, one example of where you want to say who you are first, and make sure that it's identifiable.
And if you've done your audience analysis, will have identified specific events, organizations, influencers, everybody within that target market that you're going after, and so you'll likely be able to draw links between contacts. So for an example, let's say there's a particular newsworthy blog that everybody follows in the urgent care realm, right? And so we'll just refer to him as John Smith. And so you can say, hey, I was just reading John Smith's latest article about the challenges that urgent care facilities face when they're implementing data backup solutions, and I noticed you follow him too. That makes it very clear that you're saying, hey, I know that this is a thing that you've probably seen, and I'm just connecting it.
Yeah, and that's a really great example because if you've got certain key players in an industry that connect across the board, that's a hugely beneficial glue there. Another thing that you can focus on when it comes to an industry is if there are trade shows or conferences or expos that your target tends to frequently go to. Hey, so the such and such urgent care facility conference is coming up in November, and I was getting ready for that. And as I did, it occurred to me that you probably were too. And I know that you went last year, and so I was really hoping to make sure that we connected this year. And so I wanted to send a video in advance so you could recognize me when we see each other there. And, you know, just something to kind of, you're establishing your personal nature here with this video so that it doesn't feel canned. But you're also giving them a reason for why you're contacting them.
Yeah. So then you also want to be able to kind of just let them off the hook. You say something like, I know that data backup isn't exciting, and I know you guys have probably already got some sort of solution in place. But I thought I'd take a few minutes of your time and share some of the easy ways to navigate this particular issue or to demonstrate why my product, you know, is better than whatever solution you're currently using.
Yeah, or, you know, I just want to take a minute to make sure that you recognized my face so that, you know, we could connect and maybe start to get to know each other for when we chat in the future.
And that's really, so that all part is just your intro, right? You're just highly personalizing. Say, hey, Janet, I know you read this blog. I know you follow this conference. And let me tell you, or I already know you've got a solution in place. Let me tell you, basically, I'm just trying to prove to you that this isn't a spam message. I'm trying to prove to you that I'm deeply interested in you and your issues, and that's why I'm making a video to break through to you. Right?
Who are you? Who are they? Why are you contacting them today? And why should they continue to listen to your next minute and a half of video?
Yeah. So the second part is, now that you've got the intro done, you really want to get into identifying the pain points and how your product or service really addresses those.
So this would be part 2. So if we were going to do a specific example tied into what we've been talking about so far, you could say, for example, so I can see that XX Urgent Care is the leading after-hours care provider in XYZ County, and you service hundreds of patients each week. So that causes you to face really unique challenges for accessing patient records from an offsite facility during regular hours. It gets even harder after hours, which I'm sure you know, and all the while you're striving to provide thorough patient care on a tight timetable. So I have a few ideas for how you could achieve these goals a little better.
Good, yeah.
So that would be an example of a relatively templated introduction to how your service in this case or product can resolve these common pain points. So then we're going to really get into the much more templatized solutions here.
Yeah.
You've potentially given a more personalized introduction to the solutions, but here's where you can just straight up use the same language and terminology, because you don't really, from this point on, you've mentioned that specific person, that specific company a number of times up to this point. You really don't need to specifically call out their company in your solutions, but you are talking about your own product here.
So if you're going after the front office clerk, that's who you're creating the video for. So you're kind of just trying to create an awareness of your product or service with the end user who's going to be using your product. You could say something like, well, you're spending a lot of time fielding requests from all sides, from doctors, administrators, patients. And when a patient comes in that you haven't seen in 3 weeks, you need to have quick access to their data. So you can give them that sort of personalized service. And then you just need to have a backup solution that solves all of those problems, right? Okay. So that would be just you saying something for the front office clerk.
Okay.
For doctors, it would be slightly different. So their pain point was they needed quick access to records while the patient's in the room, right? So if somebody's coming in for a specific disease, you want to kind of like, well, you've been dealing with this for 12 years and really this is whatever. So if their pain point is quick access to the records while they're seeing the patient in the room, you can say something like, you service an average of 100 patients on any given shift, and so That's
a huge number, by the way. No doctor is going to service 100 patients on a shift. So something more like, hey, so you probably service an average of 10 to 15 patients on your average shift. Yeah. And the longer you have to spend hunting for their patient records, the longer it takes for you to get them on the road to feeling better. And so our backup solution solves this problem in this way. And that way you can address their pain point, and then that's a common pain point while immediately moving on to your solution. And then the third our audience target that we talked about was administrators.
Yeah.
Their pain point being cost of storage. So it's going to be very financially focused, this one.
Yeah. So here you'd be talking about, well, look, storing files or having files on site or online, it can be really expensive. You have a storage facility and it's got to have specific requirements, right? And online, you have to have also very specific requirements for HIPAA compliance. The staff spends time looking through records or retrieving those records for patients. And so offline storage can be really expensive if you're sending somebody out to go get those records. And so here's how our backup solution or storage solution solves those problems for you.
Cool. Yeah. So for each video, you're probably going to want to identify how many pain points would you say you would want to touch on, depending on how detailed your?
Well, you want to keep your video fresh and quick. You know, if you're going into the 6 to 12 minute category, you're probably going to take too long.
Yeah.
You want to imagine them sitting in the line at Starbucks looking at your video, right? You're only going to get their attention for a minute and a half. And so you want to shoot for that, but it doesn't mean if you've got really important things to say, you can make it longer. But if you can shoot for that minute and a half mark, that's the best.
Yeah.
You know, you just need to get your points across real quick. Hey, Janet, it's Ryan from Squirrel Digital Marketing. I want to talk to you really quick about your data solutions. I know your biggest problem is the fact that you need to have access to it in your patient room and that it takes too long to look at those patient records if they're off-site. So let me tell you about my quick solutions. Boom, 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 and we're ready to go. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I got that done in about 12 seconds.
Well, and I can say personally that when I am deciding whether or not I'm going to make it through a video, I will often look to see how long that video is. And if I see from the beginning that it's 6 minutes, I often just won't even start because I'm like, I'm not going to watch 6 minutes worth of video our attention span has gotten really short. And so they have to be highly motivated. The longer you make your video, the more motivated they have to be to see your information. Yeah. And keep in mind that your first 20 seconds of engagement can commit someone to a longer video, but you have to get them to actually start watching you first. Yeah. So you can always do a longer video later if you really feel like you have additional points. So try to keep this one pretty quick.
So I think we've gone over how to basically make the video, but what's the point? Why are we making all these videos and sending them out to people if we're doing this? What are we trying to get them to do?
Well, you want to engage with them. You want to give them a reason to reply, a reason to choose to follow your call to action, whatever that may be. And to do that, it's pretty much going to come down to your lead magnet.
Yeah. And so on your lead magnet, you can talk about different things, like maybe your company has done a specific report on how much money can be saved by implementing your solution, or how much time the frontline workers can save by using your specific system, or
customer surveys that show how much happier patients are, or how much happier physicians are with their job when they have to spend less time managing record solutions. Yeah. So that,
it could be a price comparison chart between all the major vendors. I mean, it's really just something that where the person who's receiving your email, it has to be a piece of information they're going to be interested in order for them to go out and get whatever.
To want to see what it is that you're offering them. And hopefully at the end of your video, you've engaged them enough to know that you've addressed them personally, that you're taking a time out of your day and out of theirs to specifically craft solutions that are applicable to them, which will make them more likely to be interested in what it is that you're suggesting they commit to. So the other thing in this section would be if there's any sense of urgency that you can impart, then great. If there's some sort of discount that you're offering as your lead magnet, and it's something that's got a limited time to it, the longer the person feels like it's just whenever they want to do it, they will inevitably close the message, go, oh yeah, that's right, I want to get to that later, and never come back to you. Yeah. So some reason for them to act now is ideal. And that doesn't have to be a discount. It could be something that you're packaging in for an add-on. It could be that there's some sort of fee that you're going to be waiving for people who respond to this specific message. There's any number of things that you can do to add urgency.
That's a really good point. You can just essentially say, hey, look, I'm sending out 7 or 8 of these messages this week. I'm expecting to be super busy. So the sooner you get in contact with me, the sooner we can get started on crafting a custom quote for you. And so I'm just letting you know, I'm probably going to be super busy next week, so get a hold of me as soon as you can.
Yeah.
Even that can be just as simple as your urgency.
And it could be too, that you could say something like, if you are doing a discount that you want to offer for a limited period of time, create urgency, but don't necessarily want the person to feel like if they aren't ready to move forward right now, they just better not respond at all, because what's the point?
Yeah.
So you could say something like, so you don't have to decide this week, but I just need to lock in the offer code that I'm offering you here today onto your account before the sales team discontinues the code next week. So just at least let me know if this is something that you want me to code into your account. So when you are ready to talk about it, we can make sure we give you this deal. So just a few ideas for how you can create some urgency in those messages.
That's really just your closing. So you've got your crafted, personalized intro, your templated middle, and then your closing, which is just your call to action, what you want them to do next.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would say that honestly, it's not written in our notes, but I think it's appropriate to thank the person for taking the time to listen to your message and just say, hey, thanks for listening to my video here. I really hope that we can connect soon. Talk to you later. Some sort of exit that doesn't end just with the video ending.
Yeah.
So I think at this point you want a closing.
Yeah.
Okay. So
let's talk about my favorite subject in the entire world, analytics.
it's exciting for all of us.
Oh, isn't it though?
Yeah, we all love analytics.
So we need to be able, anything you do in marketing really has to have some sort of methodology for you to track it. Otherwise, it's kind of pointless. Otherwise, it's just throwing money into the wind and hoping some of it comes back.
And never knowing if there's a place that you need to improve.
So with video, if you're just posting it up on YouTube, first thing that's going to happen is somebody clicks through your video and sees it on YouTube, and they see that you've got 500 other videos where you're saying exactly the same thing to 12 other. It's going to give them a bad impression. So we use a service called Wistia. It's I think it's $20 a month. It's not really that expensive, but what it allows you to do is kind of lock in your video to very specific targets. So that way nobody can just browse your whole video library and see everything that's going on. And you can hide things like play buttons or pause buttons, or you can hide the time, how much time is left on the video. You can do certain things that you can make the video a little more customized to your thing. But it also gives you incredible analytics. It tells you how long did the target watch the video? Did they go back and rewatch it? Did they rewind it? What parts did they pause it at? Did they, so it gives you all of the analytics you could possibly need to know to improve your videos as you go. Because likely, as in everything in life, your first time isn't always going to be the best, unless it's marriage.
On that note, well, what I will say though is that data can be hugely beneficial, because if you see that a large number of your targets do start the video, but they don't get past the first 30 seconds, then okay, I really got to figure out some way to better engage in the beginning.
Cats. More cats in the video will always increase engagement. Everybody knows that. More cats.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to let you talk about the next one, because when it comes to tracking pixels, that's all your game, not
mine. So at the end of your message, you likely will have some sort of signature line.
Okay.
And you can, no matter what email program you're using, you can put like your picture in there and like your name and maybe your position, but you can also add in there tracking pixels, like using Google Tag Manager and adding in the LinkedIn pixel as well as the Facebook pixel and any other social media pixels you want.
And what do pixels do?
Well, the pixels allow you to go back and retarget this audience. So let's say, for an example, you send out 1,000 messages, which would be really amazing if you could do that on video. But if you did 1,000 messages on video, now you've got a whole group of people that you've sent this templatized email to that has some personalization to it. You don't have to prove to them the second time that you're personalizing it to them. They've already gotten that, right?
Okay.
And so on Facebook now, you throw up a follow-up video message. What says, hey, it's Jackson again from ABC, Storage Solutions. And I know you just got my email a few days ago, but I wanted to catch you while you were on Facebook and tell you one more thing, right? And it really allows them to be like, whoa, this multi-platform marketing, they see you more often. They see you in this email than they see you on Facebook. You can also target other people in the company using it this way. So you can kind of try to hit as many people in this audience as you can to try to get people to see and hear your message. Pretty cool.
So it sounds like, though, obviously, our next part here is going to be a little bit more in the how. Because if you've created 20 or 50 of these somewhat templatized, somewhat custom videos, and you're ready to send them out, you don't want to just open up your Gmail account and start sending, because you lose so much of your ability to track and follow up automatically. And that skill or ability is built into marketing automation.
Yes.
But there's a whole lot that goes into how to pick the right product for you, but also how to set up this series of messages, because it's not just about your
Series?
first.
What are you
know,
saying? This is
right?
new. What are we doing?
I know. So in our next episode, we're going to go over how to choose an email automation program that will work for your business, along with how to set up segments of a series of email messages effectively to engage and really get that lead to go from potential customer to actual customer.
Yeah, it's called a nurture campaign, is really what you want to do. You want to create a series of messages that kind of connect together and create either a story or some sort of sense of movement along with your message. So that way you can get the client to go from like, oh yeah, that's interesting, to, oh yeah, I absolutely need this thing.
And the nurture name just sounds so comforting.
It does.
So,
It's just, we're nurturing.
Just like a little warm, cozy cup of tea. And on that note.
So thank you for listening today. Once again, I'm Ryan Eldridge.
And I'm Andrea Eldridge.
And thanks for tuning in to Growth Marketer Academy.
Make sure you head over to squirreldigitalmarketing.com/podcast to see the show notes for today's episode, and also to get links to resources we talked about on the show.
And don't forget to take a minute to rate and review our podcast, or if you're watching us on video, maybe make a comment and drop us a note. Let us know if there's a question or something we can address in a future episode.
And otherwise, we'll see you next time.
See you later.
This has been Growth Marketer Academy with Ryan and Andrea Eldridge.